Our students have very diverse learning profiles, readiness levels, and interests. Differentiated instruction aims to maximize students' learning. Now, this is clearly very closely aligned to the Singapore curriculum philosophy, which puts the learner at the heart of teaching and learning.
We're going to investigate the different components of a visual text and find out what effects does it have as you as a viewer, and then we will move off from there.
Visual text is something that is new to our Science students.
Yes.
They've not been exposed to it before. Therefore, we actually look into the EL syllabus document to identify the lesson objectives that we want to focus on. This is something that I think will be useful for them, especially since it is the first time learning and understanding more about visual text. In differentiated instruction, what's important is that we have the lesson objective in mind, and regardless of how we differentiate the lesson, be it through content, process or product, we must make sure that we meet the lesson objectives for the various readiness groups that we are looking at.
Yes, and it's important for us not to rely on their abilities. So even though they may come in with different levels or standards or ability, it is still more important for us to see if they are ready for the lesson instead.
And I think that's where we talk about pre-assessment,
Yes.
where we thought very deeply about how we want to assess their level of readiness, group them and put them in the right groups for the DI lesson. What happened after the pre-assessment was done?
So after the pre-assessment, I had to talk to them about the groupings, and that's where you can explain that, okay, this is nothing to do with their intelligence, nothing to do with their ability, it's just the point at where they stand and how ready they are for the next unit.
And I think very importantly, based on the principles of DI, what we're doing here is flexible grouping. We actually communicated to them that this is not fixed. So as we move along with the other lessons in the lesson unit, they would have the opportunity to move on to other readiness groups.
Ultimately, we don't want them to have a belief that they will be forever stuck in the same group, and it's very demoralizing if they notice that the task is easier. We were looking at quite a number of texts. It has to be from the magazines or from the web page. It's because they have to be authentic. We have to be very clear and concerned about whether they have any prior knowledge or whether it can be understood within our own Singapore culture. The high readiness group, we give them some guidelines and instructions, basic instructions, and let them work through the questions by themselves. Whereas for the low readiness, we decided that we should sit down, spend more time with this group of students, eliciting their responses and checking their understanding as they interpret the text.
Yeah, I think that was very important because I think for the low readiness groups, they need the scaffolding and essentially the guidance from a teacher, the attention from a teacher, and this is also what is called the small group instruction.
Maybe let's refine that. Anyone to add on? Why is that happening? Why?
As the words would not attract the viewers.
Okay, I hear the word it's not meant to attract, right? But is there a deeper reason why we don't want them to attract attention?
As a department, we understand that our students must be at the center in everything that we do. DI is a set of beliefs that caters to this philosophy. Because this is a priority for the department, we have set aside time and space in our department meetings and white spaces to discuss DI and how teachers can share ideas on carrying out the DI lessons. DI is a journey that we are taking collectively as a department. It can be quite intimidating if DI is undertaken just by one teacher because the time needed to customize lessons can be quite substantial. But when we come together as a department and we share resources and ideas, a lot of learning, deep learning takes place.
Anyone would like to try what's audience? Yes, Ram?
It means the person who's receiving the letter or the email or the note.
Okay, so the person who's receiving your note or the one who's reading your stuff, is it? Am I right? Okay, good.
So what is it that is different?
The font in the size in the bonus is not as stronger or bigger as compared to the reading up pencil. So like, just in the 3D come out, I don't think so that that challenger, the person that would need this, would want to like give out more since they're having a clearance sale. They want to earn more money instead of like giving away free stuff.
We are learning with one another with different classmates. and different people have more ideas to share.
So what makes them stand out? So Siti has said capital letters. How they write. I heard the word big. You want to explain what you mean by how they write?
How they make it attractive.
I feel that working in groups works faster than working alone, because when we work alone, we only think like with one idea. When we work in group, we think everybody will like throw in their ideas.
Anyone would like to try?
To show that
Okay, Ashley.
when you go to the bird park, you enjoy going to the bird park
Okay,
because
good.
the girl is smiling.
Okay, and therefore, people who go will tend to smile, right? And enjoy themselves. Okay, good.
Like whenever they throw in their ideas, like what Hui Xin said, maybe we could actually talk more about their ideas, so maybe people have much more understanding about what we're trying to say.
How do we decide that it's not teenagers, but it should be young children?
Because it focuses more young
In the
children.
picture, there's a young
Yes.
girl.
So I try to encourage them, giving them the moral support and time to think so they could answer the questions.
If we messed up on our words, they can actually just help us say the things that we actually wanted to say.
Anyone might be able to explain what is purpose?
Yes,
The
Melvin?
purpose means like aim, goal, and objective.
Okay, good.
In the lesson, I find working in group, we understand the topic a bit deeper. We have some personal time to talk to the teacher about the topic. We will learn together, interact with each other. Like that is everybody's success.
How do you feel about the DI lesson in general? What are some of the highlights and some of the takeaways from the lesson?
It becomes a culture where they learn from each other, which is what I would like to see my students. The expectation where it's okay to make a mistake, we all learn from it, and it's okay if we share because that's how we grow, and it's also fine that we learn together so that as a class we can progress as one, ensure that no one is left behind.
How do you think the low readiness groups have benefited from this DI lesson?
I spend more time with this group, give them some hand-holding, give them some scaffolds, go through with them maybe one or two questions. But the third one, which is application, I ask them to try it out by themselves, and that will give them some form of moral booster for the subsequent questions.
How did the students react to your guided instruction?
They were very on task. They were asking me questions. Generally, the questions were relevant and were important to their understanding of the English language.
Do you think they would have displayed this kind of behavior in a lesson without DI?
I think it's very hard if it's a chalk and talk. So typically, they will just be copying down answers, but they may not understand how we derive the set of answers. We also want to encourage the spirit of learning, so they should be encouraged to ask questions and should not be fearful of making wrong responses.
I think it is through this DI lesson that we gave opportunities to these students who are of high readiness, opportunities to express their views and come up with their own interpretations of whatever task that they're doing. I think the mid-readiness and the low-readiness groups, they actually learn from this as well. And I think that this would not have happened if we have a lesson with no differentiated instruction, where everything is in a way homogeneous and where everyone learns the same thing.
Okay. What do you notice about the answers on the right?
Accurate, specific, or
Okay, I heard accurate. What makes them more accurate, Niron?
they
What do you-
specify.
They specify things. What effect does it have for both words? Okay, very good. So this is the one you need to write down.
Our students have responded quite positively because they felt that such an approach helps them understand the learning objectives in a non-threatening and a very affirmative environment. As a department, I feel we've come closer. It's a culture of learning together in a very mutually supportive environment with a common purpose, a common intent to make learning more effective for our students. When this happens, and I see it with my very own eyes, I feel that we are all in this together. We know that mistakes will be made. We know that different understandings of DI will crop up. But with the discussions and the learning, I think we are developing slowly a deeper understanding of how DI really works in the classroom.